So you've probably heard someone say this before: producers make 50% of the music, so they deserve 50% of the money. Now, if you're someone who believes this, I want to spend today's video talking about why you shouldn't. In fact, I would go as far as saying that if you do believe this, it's probably not going to be good for you. First, I want to start by saying that I am a producer, and obviously it would be nice if we all got paid more. But it would also be nice if my whistle was twice as long. I'm not interested in talking about what ifs and living in a fantasy land or believing something just because it feels nice. I'm far more interested in talking about reality and really understanding why things are the way they are. My belief is that this will allow us to actually make better decisions for ourselves, as hard as they may be, because we will have a better understanding of how things actually work. Now, there are 3 quotes that do a really good job of explaining this idea and why producers don't deserve 50% of the money from music. The first one is this one here: if you don't make yourself irreplaceable, somebody will replace you. To demonstrate this point, let's start by talking about Rihanna. Not this person here, this is Robin Fenty. What I'm talking about is Rihanna the entity. Imagine Rihanna as a business. For Rihanna to actually operate, there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of people involved. You have managers, publicists, label executives, writers, and obviously you have producers like us. There are just a lot of people involved. Now let's do a thought exercise. Let's say that one day Bill, one of the guys that helps build the stages for Rihanna's tours, says that he's tired of how little he gets paid and he threatens to leave unless he gets paid more. His thinking is that he's the one that builds the stages for all the tours, and the tours are what makes a lot of money for the entire Rihanna operation, therefore he deserves more. Now, if Bill actually did leave, what do you think would happen? Would this have an effect on how much money Rihanna could actually generate? I would say no. Everything would probably be pretty much the exact same. Bill would easily be replaced by someone else, and Rihanna would continue to operate as usual. Now let's take another example. Let's say Robin Fenty decides to leave Rihanna because she's unhappy and it gets announced that she will be getting replaced by someone else. And let's say hypothetically the music is going to be the exact same quality, the live shows are going to be the exact same, the performances are going to be the exact same. It's just going to be a different person who's going to be the face of Rihanna. Let's even say, for example, that Bill is going to be replacing her. Bill is now going to do what Robin Fenty did for the Rihanna business. He is now the face of Rihanna. Now, if this happened, do you think the Rihanna business would be able to generate as much income? I'd say no. Sales would probably plummet. The big reason why is because people pay money and attention to Rihanna for Robin Fenty, the person. They like her and are attached to her, even outside of the music that she makes. People don't know or like Bill, therefore Robin Fenty is far less replaceable in this example. Now let's apply this exact same idea to you, a producer. I would argue that a producer is probably somewhere in between Robin Fenty and Bill, and honestly, I would say that any individual producer is probably closer to Bill. Unfortunately, this might suck to hear, but again, let's just think about this. You may have this idea that your music is just going to be so good that you will become irreplaceable. But one thing to consider is that when artists are working on music for their albums, they record dozens, if not hundreds of songs, and they will work with lots of producers to create all these songs. Now, if you end up being one of the producers whose beat is good enough to get chosen to be a song that's going to be on the album, you may think, boom, you've become irreplaceable. You are now making music that's so good that artists will be wanting to work with you no matter what your terms may be, just because they love your production so much. But I would argue that this is just not true. If you think that artists make their decisions purely based on the quality of music, I would say that this is not the case. There are plenty of stories out there of specific songs not making albums because of money issues, sample clearance issues, payment split issues, timing issues. Artists will make business decisions in relation to their art all the time. They will remove songs from albums for a variety of reasons, even if they really love the music. The quality of music is just one factor of many. So when it comes to how replaceable you are, I would say that if you're not absolutely crucial to an artist, if you're just some person who's submitting beats through an email, there are thousands of others doing the exact same. And for every one producer who says, no, I will not work unless I get paid more, there are 10 producers right behind them willing to say, yes, I will work for far less or even free. I am willing to replace that person if you're looking for good music. Nowadays, good music is just so much more abundant with just how accessible music production has become. So in order to become truly irreplaceable to an artist, you're going to have to provide something that is just far more scarce than just good production. So that's one important idea that you need to consider. I want to move on to the second quote, which is also very important to understand and will further tie all these ideas together. And it's this: all profit is derived from risk. So to understand this quote and how it relates to whether producers deserve to get paid more, let's think about this here. For those that don't know, this is Chance the Rapper's album, The Big Day. This was an album that was not very well received when it came out, and a lot of fans voiced that they did not like this album. Now let's think about this idea of risk. Every single time an artist puts out a project, they are taking a risk. The success of their project will have a huge effect on their future. For example, with Chance the Rapper's album, soon after the album was released, he had to begin canceling shows for the album tour, and it is said to be partly due to low sales. And I'm not bringing this up to be critical or to mock him by any means. I bring this up because it exemplifies this idea very well. Chance the Rapper took a risk when he put this album out. Unfortunately, that risk didn't pay off as the album wasn't very liked by his audience. And because of this, his ability to earn income in the future was greatly affected and his career was somewhat damaged to some degree. This is the risk that every artist takes when they put a new project out. And it's a big risk. I would say that this is also somewhat true for the labels as well. I know it's really easy to hate labels because of how scummy they often are. I've had a lot of my own money taken from labels. They are extremely inefficient and dysfunctional, so believe me, I really don't like them. But in relation to this quote, I can understand why they make sure they're the ones who get paid more. When labels sign artists, they at times risk thousands or even millions of dollars. And they do so because that's their business model. It's to loan artists money, and if the artists succeed, they profit off of them. But this is inherently risky because many of the artists that they will sign will never go anywhere. Typically, only a small number of artists actually succeed. For everyone else, that's basically money lost. And labels basically live and die by these decisions. If a label exec, for example, has a bad streak of signing too many failures, they would ideally get fired from their job. And just like Chance the Rapper, this kind of failure hurts the label's ability to earn money going forward and is a huge risk. And that brings me to us producers. What risks do we face in comparison to the artists and the labels? I would argue that we face very little, relatively speaking. For example, Timbaland and Pierre Bourne both produced songs on Chance the Rapper's album. Do you think their ability to work was at all damaged by how poorly received this album was? If an artist found out that Timbaland worked on this album, do you think they would say no to a Timbaland beat? The answer is no. As producers, we thankfully have more of an opportunity to work, regardless of our past failings that we've worked on. And comparatively, most of what we risk is lost time and wasted effort if we work on a failing project, while others who are involved can end up losing their entire careers and millions of dollars. Let me ask you a question. If someone came to you with a business proposal where you risked $100,000 of your own money and they only risked $10,000 and yet they demanded 50% of the profits, would you likely accept this deal? And the same type of idea applies when music's put out. In order for everyone to agree to come together to put out a project, certain parties are going to demand more of the profit since they are taking more of the risk. If producers are not risking as much, yet they demand an equal amount of money, the other parties that are risking more would not consent to moving forward with putting out music, since this would be really unfair. Fundamentally, different parties are risking different amounts and therefore can demand different outcomes. And this brings me to the last quote that I want to share. You get paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of problems you solve. And when it comes to getting good production, it's just not as big of a problem as it once was. I think a great video that exemplifies this is this one in the corner, where Kenny Beats explains how him opening up his own studio really helped his career.
I think having your own studio as a producer is one of the most valuable things you can do, because it puts you in so many different power positions. I'll engineer it, I'll do the beats. That's how I got every placement.
And when you think about this quote, it makes sense. Artists don't have as big of a problem finding production, but finding a space to record and do so without eating away into your recording budget and having a good producer or engineer help guide the session, that's a bigger problem for an artist. Kenny Beats decided to solve that problem for artists by letting them come to his studio and record for free. All the meanwhile, he helped them with their music as well. And he's doing exactly what all three of these quotes say. He's becoming far less replaceable for an artist because he's no longer just a guy emailing beats. He's someone who provided studio space and also actually provided production and recording help to those artists. Now you may be thinking that opening up your own studio would be a big risk and that it might fail, and you'd be exactly right, which is exactly why Kenny Beats was rewarded for this in the long term as much as he was, because he was able to do this and do it well. And finally, as I mentioned, he is solving a bigger problem for an artist rather than just where can I find good production. So I'm hoping all of this is starting to make sense now. In my opinion, as counterintuitive as it sounds, artists don't actually get paid because of their art or the amount of work that they do. They get paid based on how much consumption and attention they can generate. The music is just what generates this consumption and attention, but it's not inherently the object of value in this equation, financially speaking. So if all you're doing as a producer is making good music and you think that's going to be enough, I would say that you might need to rethink this idea. You will likely need to do more and risk more. Now, all of this might sound disheartening and confusing because you might be thinking, well, how do I earn money from my music if I want to be a producer? I would actually argue that this is probably the best time to be a producer. I could sit here and explain how you might want to go about thinking about finding opportunities for generating wealth using your music, but I think a far better idea is to link a video that should be showing up in the corner right now. It's a 3.5-hour podcast by this guy named Naval Ravikant. In it, he explains this idea far better than I ever could. It definitely helped me understand how the world works a lot better, and I would go as far as saying as it probably changed my life for the better as well. So if you're interested, I really recommend checking it out. It should be showing up on the screen right now. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.